In a quiet neighborhood on the northeastern edge of Indiana, on an afternoon that should have been no different from any other, a young girl named April Marie Tinsley walked home from a friend's house. It was Good Friday, April 1st, 1988, a day that would unfold into sorrow and mystery that would haunt her community for decades. April was only 8 years old, a second grader with golden hair and a bright smile, attending Fairfield Elementary School and singing in her church's children's choir. That simple walk home, just a few blocks from where she lived in Fort Wayne, would be the last untroubled step she would ever take. What followed would test the limits of patience, technology, and human compassion, and would ultimately reveal how long a community could hold hope in its heart. It began, as so many tragedies do, in the ordinary cadence of a day. April was playing with friends, moving between houses near her home. Shortly after 3 p.m., she returned to retrieve her umbrella, an everyday errand, uncomplicated and familiar. But she never arrived back at her front door for dinner. When April's mother realized she hadn't returned, concern ripened into alarm. She called the police. That night, dozens of officers, 250 Fort Wayne officers and dozens of volunteers, fanned out into the fading light, searching for any trace of the smiling child who should have walked through her own doorway hours ago. A witness later recalled seeing a white man forcing a girl believed to be April into a blue pickup truck, a sighting that would echo in investigators' minds for years. 3 days later, in a rural stretch of DeKalb County, about 20 miles from the place she disappeared, a jogger found a body lying face down in a shallow drainage ditch. It was April. Her small shoes were beside the road, one missing. Her body had been covered with the clothing she wore when she vanished. Autopsy results would later show she had been raped and asphyxiated. A grieving community lit candles, planted flowers, and organized search parties, holding on to prayers and whispered hopes that the rain-washed fields of Indiana might somehow yield answers. But answers were slow to come. In those first weeks and months after April's death, investigators combed every inch of evidence they could find. They interviewed neighbors, reconstructed her final steps, searched fields and barns, and tried to follow every lead. In 1988, the science of DNA analysis was still in its early phases, especially with minute samples taken from an unspeakable crime scene. Detectives wisely collected and preserved evidence from April's clothing, knowing even then that future science might one day speak where their eyes could not. Yet despite exhaustive efforts, the case grew cold. Years passed. Leads dried up. Yet the community did not forget. Parents watched their children more closely. The volunteers who had once combed cornfields kept the memory of April alive through fundraisers, memorial fund creation, and community vigils. 2 years after April's disappearance, in May 1990, investigators stumbled upon an unnerving clue. On the paint-faded boards of a barn near where her body had been found, someone had scrawled a message in crude lettering. "I kill 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley. Did you find her other shoe? Haha, I will kill again." The handwriting was unsettling, childish in its taunting tone. Yet it carried with it a chilling claim of responsibility and an implied threat. The authorities collected the message, preserving it as evidence. It was the first of many messages that would appear in the years to come. In 2004, the case took an even more disturbing turn when investigators began to receive a series of handwritten notes addressed to various young girls around the Fort Wayne area. These messages claimed to come from the person who had killed April. Alongside the notes were used condoms and Polaroid images, nearly grotesque tokens left in bags tucked near playgrounds and on bicycles. One such note, released publicly, read, "Hi honey. I've been watching you. I am the same person that kidnapped, raped and killed April Tinsley. "You are my next victim." The spelling mistakes, the crude handwriting, and the confident tone told law enforcement that this person was reveling in the terror they were inflicting, or at least wanted the world to think so. DNA analysis of the biological evidence collected from these notes and condoms revealed a critical breakthrough. The DNA matched the profile obtained from April's own case. The chilling notes were not random, they were connected. But even so, no identity matched any known profile in law enforcement databases. The trail went cold again. For nearly 3 decades, the Tinsley case remained unresolved, a cold case file on the shelves of the Fort Wayne Police Department and the Indiana State Police. But beneath layers of dust and passing years, the collected evidence remained preserved, waiting quietly for advancements in science that might one day bring clarity where before there was only darkness. Investigators refused to let April's memory fade completely. They formed alliances with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, consulted experts in child abduction, and kept hope alive within a small but dedicated circle of detectives. In the early 2000s, the FBI's profiling experts described the likely suspect as a preferential child sex offender, someone with a long-standing, persistent sexual interest in children. The profile placed him as a white male, likely between 40 and 50 years old, living or working near northeast Fort Wayne. But identifying a general profile is not the same as naming a face. The real turning point came many years later, in a way that would have been unimaginable when April disappeared. By the mid-2010s, a new form of forensic science was emerging: genetic genealogy. This method used DNA submitted by individuals to public genealogy websites to build extensive family trees, helping investigators locate relatives of unknown suspects. These tools had already made headlines in high-profile cases such as the Golden State Killer case. In May 2018, detectives working on April's case sent DNA from evidence at the original crime scene to a genetic genealogy company called Parabon Nanolabs. Using information from public DNA databases, investigators and genealogists painstakingly pieced together family connections that could point back to the unknown killer. Within weeks, they had narrowed the field to just a few potential matches. One of those matches led them to a man named John D. Miller, a resident of Grable, Indiana, a small town not far from Fort Wayne. Neighbors described him as a quiet, sometimes irritable loner, the sort of man whose presence might go unnoticed until the truth forced a reckoning. The arrest, a silence broken after 30 years. In July 2018, armed with this new information, police began surveillance on Miller. They collected items bearing his DNA, including used condoms from his trash, and compared them to the decades-old DNA from the Tinsley case. The match was unmistakable. Within days, officers were at his front door. When they asked him why they wanted to speak with him, he reportedly replied, simply, "April Tinsley." Under questioning, Miller allegedly confessed to abducting her on that spring afternoon in 1988, taking her to his trailer, sexually assaulting her, and strangling her to death. He admitted holding her body for a time before leaving it in the ditch where it was found. Miller was charged with murder, child molesting, and related offenses. In December of that same year, he pleaded guilty, bringing an end to the investigative chase that had consumed law enforcement and April's family for 30 years. April's death had carved a wound into her community, one that time alone could not heal. In April 2015, before the case was solved, the neighborhood where she had lived began building a memorial called April's Garden. It became a place not of fear, but of remembrance, where her loved ones and neighbors could gather, plant flowers, and reflect on her short life. In the years that followed her death and her case's resolution, community members have continued to honor April's memory through annual walks, balloon releases, and the planting of trees and benches in her name. These are quiet gestures of love, reminders that even in the face of loss, the spark of human connection endures. Investigators who worked tirelessly on the case from its earliest days to its eventual resolution have also been recognized for their dedication, receiving awards for their steadfast pursuit of justice. As we look back on April's story, it is worth remembering that she was more than a victim in a headline. She was a little girl with dreams, family, friends, and a life that deserved to unfold. Her case underscores the patience of justice, how science, persistence, and humanity can intersect across decades to bring closure, however bittersweet, to those left behind. This story reminds us that even in the longest shadows of uncertainty, hope can take root, and one day, justice can follow.